All right, gang, it looks like we are live, ready to go. Just wait till the live stream catches up here with me. Very good. There's about a 7-second delay, which I'm sure if you guys do a lot of YouTube or Rumble, with these live streams, that's just par for the course. Hey, guys, great to see you here. Come on in, one and all. Today is March 25th, 2022. A blessed Annunciation Day to all of you. Today is the day we celebrate the angel Gabriel announcing the incarnation to the Virgin Mary, which means we are exactly 9 months away from Christmas. And this is, just as a sidebar, this is why the church has always been pro-life, because Christ's life begins on this day. It begins at the moment of conception, March 25th. Hello there, RPD 2002. Good to see you guys. Come on in as people slowly trickle in at this point. I wonder if we're going to have more of a European crowd today, given that a lot of people are at work in the States with the time difference. Interestingly, this is why we commemorate Christ's death and resurrection around this time in early spring. Easter is a movable date because it's connected to a lunar calendar. But Christ lives a perfect, there you go, come on in, guys. Christ lives a perfect 33 years. And so Easter is often celebrated right around this time, say the March 25th, first week of April, around that time. And so the church has always affirmed that Christ's life began at the moment of conception, when he was conceived on March 25th, 9 months before December 25th. So there you go. A blessed Annunciation to all of you. I had a lovely time at liturgy this morning, and what a wonderful lunch with my family. It is live stream Friday. Come on in, gang. Great to see you guys. Hi from the UK, Bluebird. Yes, I know we must have lots of people on the across the pond, given the time difference. People here should be working, should be out there working, right? So good to see you guys. Come on in. I'm your host, Dr. Steve. If this is your first time with us, I am your daily fake news antidote. So come on into your Patriots professor. I'll get there. Your Patriot professor's den, as we like to call it, so I can help you to think better, so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent and insane times. So if you have not already done so, you know what to do. Everyone knows what to do. Put that in the chat. Smack that bell and subscribe button, right? Put it in the chat. Smack that bell and subscribe button. I'd love to have you as a regular part of our online community. We are live. Our super chats are on. If you'd like to ask some questions, we got tons to cover today. We're going to be talking about the latest on the ground from Ukraine, the big development there. But mainly, we're going to be talking about how the liberal legacy media appears to be finally getting it. Thank you, Robert Del Rocio. I see that. God bless you, Dr. Turley. Happy Feast of the Annunciation, the Incarnation of our Lord. Amen to that. And you as well, my friend. We're going to be talking about how the legacy media finally seems to be getting that Joe Biden has basically destroyed their world. It's a fascinating development, but we're finally seeing the media. I'm going to give you tons of examples of it. We're finally seeing the legacy media waking up to the fact that the liberal globalist order that they so revere, that they so love, is actually shattering right before their very eyes. And we have no one else to thank ultimately than Joe Biden for doing it. I hope to show you why that is in the course of the live stream here. So this is a huge development. We'll be getting into it and so much more. So come on in, gang. Hit that subscribe button, and the super chats are on for your questions. Before we begin, what are you willing to do in order to affect change in our country? Well, at Patriot Switch, over 2 million patriots all across the nation are making the switch to make sure that their purchases support patriotic companies. Now, the neat thing here is that it involves nothing outside of your ordinary routine or the items that you normally purchase, but the quality is second to none, and the pricing is comparable, if not better, in most cases, even for better quality products. So you can make the switch today and start voting with your wallets to support companies that promote freedom. Learn more by visiting Patriot Switch in the description below. Okay, gang, so let's dive right in here. Let's start with what's going on in terms, hey, Movie Dog, can you comment on the last video about the chip? Yes, Klaus Schwab. Yes, of the World Economic Forum. Wasn't that bizarre? Wasn't that creepy? So we just put up an IRL, an in real life video about Klaus Schwab, who's the head of the World Economic Forum, the Davos group. I mean, it's one of the pillars of globalism that is collapsing and that's falling apart. And he's talking about in this seems to be a French interview. Just check it out. Make sure you click on it when we're done with this. Of course, he's just talking about how they're talking about information technologies that basically get woven into our DNA in some way. He said at first we could start by putting in information chips, just all our basic data, anything specific to our own identities into our clothing. But then he said eventually they're going to be put into our skin, even mentions into our brain. And I really think this is very much part of what's called surveillance capitalism that's developed over the last 20 years or so. Pretty much, we have to understand we are not the customers for, say, like big tech. We're actually its products. So all of our user information is under intense scrutiny and is examined by Silicon Valley and put into discernible patterns that are then in turn sold to advertisers. And the more they know about us, this is key, the more micro information they know about every bit of our habits and the like, the more they get to charge advertisers with, the more valuable their advertising information becomes, their database becomes. So you and I are not, the reason why everything is free on the internet is because we're not the customers of big tech, we're its products. We are what's sold. And the next, so this would just be that on steroids. Why wait for us to get on a computer when you can track what we do on a daily basis in all kinds of ways? The next step to that is not simply tracking what we're doing. It is, it's not simply tracking what we're doing. Sorry, I'm going to try to slow this down here. It's actually controlling it. Now, if they could do that, if they can control our choices, not just simply monitor our choices, but determine our choices, then that becomes the most valuable thing imaginable. That's money in the bank for globalist corporations and the like. So that's what makes me nervous about it. It's the next step of surveillance capitalism. We start with they surveilling our activity on the keyboard and the computer. Then in the next step with microchips, actually literally in play on our clothes. I never believed this until I saw it with my own eye, heard it with my own ears. You put in the clothing or increasingly possibly even in the body. Then we can monitor your data, your life information, lifestyle choice information 24/7. And that takes the value to advertisers to a whole new level. And then the final step is, well, what if we go beyond just monitoring choices? What if we can actually control them? What if we can actually orchestrate and engineer human choice in accordance with the products and services and so on that we want to give? Well, again, that's the ideal perfect money in the bank kind of scenario. So that's what I think a lot of us are getting nervous about. Revco, great to see you again. Man, greetings from behind the Zion Wall here in Utah. Thank you for being so positive force in such a negative world. Thank you, Revco. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it's all falling apart. The globalist world is falling apart. It's scary. There's no question the way it's falling apart. Somebody asked me if my opinion, because we've been following the death of globalism now for 5 years. And somebody asked me the other night in our Insiders Club if my opinions or, my perspective had changed at all. And I had to say, yeah, as all of this is unfolding, yeah, I always thought that a, definite war would be started, but on their side, but on the globalist side of things. I did not bank on one of the traditionalists, and I do put, if you see my videos on Vladimir Putin, and by the way, I've also done it on Ukraine as well, the right-wing turn in Ukraine over the years. I even covered Volodymyr Zelensky's election back in 2019. So, it wasn't like I had a dog in the fight. I see Vladimir Putin as a very important force of traditionalism, re-traditionalism, and anti-globalism in the world. I never thought it would be that side that would start the war. That really took me aback. That's something that changed. But yes, things are changing in ways we never even imagined right now. An extraordinary pace. Wow, yeah, I'm seeing guys from across the pond in UK, Scotland. Good to see you guys. Scotland. I'm going to have a scotch tonight. Absolutely. My Johnny Walker Black, I think I'm going to indulge in this evening for Annunciation Day. There you go. Salty Army There you go. Pat Jenkins. Great to see you guys. I love you guys. Hey, Stephen Connors. Good to see you guys. Do you think Klaus Schwab chip will happen or be successful? Christian Juan. Christian, I don't think so in the end. I don't. Again, we'll have to see. I mean, they're going to... My assessment here at this point is they're going to do everything they can to salvage the Great Reset over as much of the world as they can, which is increasingly getting sparse. So I think you're going to see a massive push in Europe and the United States. Certainly you already saw it in Canada, to try to demonize the patriot movements, the populist movements, as basically being Vladimir Putin Part 2. And then what they're going to try to do is they're just going to try to go full-blown woke, full-blown globalist. And I don't think it's going to work in the end. I think they're going to collapse, because the very world order needed for the plausibility of that kind of program is dying. It's collapsing. And again, like I said, we actually have the mainstream media admitting that now. That the very framework for a philosophical globalism, the very structure, systems that make philosophical globalism, the idea that there is legitimately a one-size-fits-all system for all peoples, times, and places, it's just imploding. So it looks like with the rise of what we talk about on the channel, civilization states in form of Russia, China, and India, increasingly now the return to the nation state, and particularly the patriotic call to return, is going to increasingly look much more attractive and just much more plausible in a post-globalist world. So I think they will try. I don't know how far they'll get, but I don't think it's going to succeed in the end. I think the days of Klaus Schwab and Soros, as I have in the thumbnail, and Biden and all that, I think the days are over. I think the ship has sailed for them. Why do you think Hannity and most of Fox is so heavily promoting the war? This is from Chauncey. And you would think he would realize by now how out of touch his hawkish views are. You would think. You would think, Chauncey. Absolutely. Sorry, I was at church this morning, so I didn't get as much coffee, so I'm a little bit off here. I mean, you're talking about a couple of different things there, which is really interesting, because you're talking about the divide, but you're also talking about why is he so, rhino, neocon Lindsey Grahamish. And again, I've been shocked at how many people I thought would not drink the blue-yellow Kool-Aid. And this is no offense to Ukraine. It's a total offense to the way social media generates what we call outrage culture, where we actually have studies out that show that on average, just in the course of your day, the only about 5% of the things that you encounter in the course of your day outside of social media would legitimately provoke a sense of outrage. Think of driving, some road rage, your commute to work or something. You'll see some nasty stuff there, a coworker being a bit of a jerk or whatever. But generally speaking, 95% of our day, and again, we have studies on this, 95% of the day are outrage free. There's no basis for us being outraged. Try getting on social media for 5 minutes without having something specifically intended to provoke outrage pass your sight. Try it. It's impossible. And it's because of something called outrage porn. It's actually called outrage porn. And it's because studies in virality have found that videos, articles, whatever, that provoke outrage are significantly more likely to go viral than any other emotion that is evoked, as it were. So as you can tell with my channel, I absolutely stay away from outrage porn. I despise it. I absolutely vilify it. And so the big problem I have with the whole kind of, yuki kind of sentiment right now is I think it's rooted in manufactured outrage porn against Russia in particular, and so I find it to be a radically fabricated reality, a simulacrum that I just refuse to participate in. I'm trying to understand, literally, I try to break through the fake news and trying to understand really what's happening here. So that said, I don't know, maybe Sean has gotten caught up in that. I don't know. Another element to it is I think a lot of conservatives, patriots, still are globalists. They still have a neocon globalist bent to them, which is America first means America first for everybody else. So America should be running the world because we're a force of good, and I do believe generally we are. We're a force of good, and when we see real evil out there, we have a moral obligation to confront it no matter the costs, no matter whether it is part of our national security or not. And that, ironically, is a form of globalism. The idea that a one-size-fits-all political and economic system is a moral imperative for the world because of all the good and all the benefits that it brings. To which a patriot will generally say, well, then what we do is we live it out the best way we can, and we hope and pray that other nations will voluntarily want to invite that into their lives. But if they don't, that's their choice. We don't, an America First policy that, for example, that Trump instituted, whenever I was listening to this the other day, I think it was Robert Barnes was talking about this. Whenever Trump took on China, he never brought up their so-called human rights abuses. He never accused them of being a lesser nation than the United States. It's very clever of Trump. Okay, never even with, if I recall, Kim Jong-un, he never did that. He never accused another nation of being a lesser nation. Ironically, except Ukraine, when he had Zelensky sitting right next to him, if I recall, it was in the White House, and he started talking about how corrupt of a nation Ukraine was. Did Zelensky fudge around when he was talking about that. But outside of that, what he would do is he would challenge China in saying, you're ripping us off, and you know it. You know it because you guys are smart. Trump always had a fascinating way of dealing with other nations, castigating them and complimenting them at the same time. You ripped us off because you're so smart and our politicians are so dumb. That ends now. And so either we're going to make the money up that you're ripping us off with tariffs, or we're going to bring our manufacturing jobs back home and we're going to do it here. But either way, you're not going to deflate your currency. You're not going to manipulate the market to your favor, and we're not going to sit around anymore when you do that. So that's, I think that is a post-globalist, America first geopolitics that doesn't judge the other nation, but just simply says, hey, we don't want to do business with you if you keep doing it this way, that I just don't think Hannity, I don't think it's sunk in with Hannity yet. So the only frames of reference he has for dealing with someone like Putin, as it were, or China or what have you, is neocon frames of reference. He just doesn't have any other. And as far as the divide, yeah, no, he'll get it. I mean, I'm sure he already has in his comments. He'll get it. Even Breitbart is going to have to get it. They're just so the distance between themselves and a Bryce Anderson, for example, where guys, we're not fighting for your corrupt wars anymore. We're not fighting for you anymore. Like Bryce Anderson said, if somebody comes to our shores, I will dig in my boots into Arkansas soil and I will die for everything I love. They will meet the fiercest force imaginable. But, we're not going to go and fight all these overseas wars in the name of some, ill-begotten rules-based international order. Those days are just gone. So there you go. That's the way I'm understanding it. All right, guys, let's see. Let me give you just some of the probably the biggest upset. Did I say Bryce Anderson? Is it Bryce Mitchell? I got it wrong. I think someone just corrected me. Thank you for that. So the problem when you're doing this off the cup. Bryce Mitchell. God bless that fellow. I owe him to get his name right, because he is so wonderful, and I think he articulates. I think he articulates America First geopolitics better than anyone. Maryland, Dagoti, is there any hope for the West? Yes, there's hope for the West. There is, but it is going to be rough. It's going to be a bit rough, particularly in Europe. It's going to be a bit rough going. The breakdown of the globalist order, Europe is so dependent on the globalist system. And this is why Europe has been able to go green and push that kind of ideology, because they don't have. They buy their oil, they buy their fuel, they buy so much of their food, and fertilizer and the like, and they don't have to produce it themselves. And when you have to produce it yourselves, you're not going to go green. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. Russia isn't, China isn't, India isn't, the United States isn't. There's just no way around that. You're not going to go green. You got to keep up with fossil fuels and the like. And now with the massive sanctions on Russia, 40% of Europe's fuel. I don't know how much grain you're getting from Russia. Russia's the two largest exporters of grain and wheat are Russia and Ukraine. Okay, and one of their major markets is Europe. But with the breakdown of that system, as we may be seeing it, it's going to hurt in Europe. So the question is how are the people going to respond? Are they going to run back into the arms of these globalist bureaucrats, these systematists, or are they going to go back to nation first, nation culture, custom, and tradition, and bilateral agreements with nations to be able to take care of their needs? I think they will eventually, but it may take a little time, because Europe is so conditioned itself to believing that a one-size-fits-all secularized system of politics and economics is the wave of peace for all mankind. And of course, it's falling apart. It's just not happening. Here in Canada, hey, Abe. Abe is great. Here in Canada, we have an uphill battle. Yeah, Trudeau just made a coalition with the NDP. Yeah, we're stuck with them to 2025. I did not see that. Okay, I did not. So they're not going to have elections then, which is because because you have had a hung parliament up at this point. Normally, you have elections every 2 years or year and a half with a hung parliament. Yeah, so I know Canada is rough right now because you do have a clear sort of California-like majority, and on the one hand, and then the populist vote tends to get split. I know you know this, just for the wider audience. It tends to get split because Canadian populism tends to be very regional. So Albertan populism is not Quebec populism. And so populists in Quebec could actually end up voting very liberal because the conservatives will tend to be more macro-nationalists, where Quebec wants a party that's less macro-nationalist so they could be more micro-nationalists and ethno-nationalists and the like. So yeah, it is tough. Again, the good news to hold on to there, and I'm actually speaking at New Blue Party convention next Friday, if I recall, which is really cool, brand new party in Canada. And we'll be talking, I'm planning on talking a little bit about demographic trends, because Canada is a very strong, it's small, that's okay, but very, very strong conservative Christian community, conservative Christian presence, and they're having lots of kids. And demographers like Eric Kaufman, who is himself Canadian, he's an expat at the University of London, he's arguing that eventually over time, that does mean that conservative Christians win in places like Canada, the United States, and so on, because just demography is destiny. And we do find that the more conservative the families, the more patriotic and so forth, the more the kids tend to embrace that into adulthood. They carry that into their adult years. So the retention rates are anywhere from 70 or 80%. It's very, very impressive stuff. So patience is what is required at this point. So I'm with you. But I posted a couple of IRLs in real lives on our channel of Trudeau getting absolutely roasted at the European Parliament when he was there with NATO. I mean, they saw it. A lot of leaders saw it, that he was a violator of human rights, not a champion. So it's really cool. All right. You guys are great. We're active today, huh? All right. Let's see. Hopefully this is still going. It just froze. There we go. Let me see. I just saw one go by. Willilos, what do you think of the fate of America as a continent is? Do you see a bigger connection with Central and South American countries? That's a good question, and we're going to have to start. Asking that in the age of civilization states, because really, the way the world map is changing right now is the nation state is now sharing the planet increasingly with the civilization state. And the civilization state is a massive, it is culture, the way Sam Huntington would define civilization. It's culture in its ultimate expression, in its largest expression. So you could have a European culture, but many, many different states within it. But what if you were to have a whole European civilization, right? But what if they were all to consolidate around a single state? And that's, people are a little nervous with the EU turning into a super state like that. That's basically what Russia is doing right now. That's basically China, and that's increasingly India. And so in a world of civilization states, we're going to have to see how well they function and how well they play out in the economic sphere, to see to what extent smaller nation states need to end up, in effect, forming alliances so as to be able to take on civilization states, just economically and perhaps militaristically. But I doubt that at this point. Again, the radical global imperialism that model seems to have shattered. That ship has sailed, at least at this point. Who knows by the end of the century? But right now, aims of taking over the world are pretty much over. Nobody's particularly interested in that. What they're interested in is taking over a world, that civilizational cultural sphere, say like with China and Russia and India. That's the new politics that seems to be emerging on in the Eurasian theater. And then the question is, what's going to be the response in the West? What's going to be the response in North America and South America and alike? That we're going to have to see. Absolutely, no question. So it would be the only thing I would say is, according to Sam Huntington, North America and South America are just different cultures overall. He saw them as different kind of civilizations. They do have a European. They both have a European point of reference, but he's worked them out for as different civilizations. We'll have to see. We'll have to take a look at how that works itself out. We'll have to see. So great question. These are all awesome questions. You guys are, I got to tell you, this is so neat because when the war first broke out, I mean, all I was getting. Sorry guys, I'm trying to get through all this, and I'm missing you. Oh my, I'm missing so many. This is where I need a moderator, guys. Big time. Sorry for that. But I'll get into that in a second. Let me get to Navit. Do you think Biden sending military weapon to Ukraine is just prolonging the war, not de-escalate? Yeah, there's no reason for the United States to be getting involved in this right now, especially when we do take into consideration at least a role. That's not necessarily the role or whatever, but we take into consideration at least a role that NATO's eastward expansion played in provoking Russia's act. Russia did see what NATO was doing. Remember, in 1990, NATO was 17 countries. Today, it is 30. It is almost double what it was 30 years ago. And all of that expansion is this eastward expansion. Russia was told in 1990, Gorbachev was told by Herbert Walker Bush when Eastern Germany was being assimilated into Western Germany, and that did mean by definition that NATO was going to be encroaching into the Eastern Bloc. Gorbachev was assured NATO had absolutely no intention of going any further eastward, and Bill Clinton destroyed that in 1998 when Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic were invited into NATO, and that was the beginning. And then when you add to that the bombings, which the first anniversary of which, I mean the anniversary, the first day of bombings of the 78 days of bombings of Yugoslavia, particularly Serbia, Belgrade. When you add to that the fact that NATO at that point became officially for the first time an offensive force. Remember, Serbia never invaded any NATO country. They became an offensive force, and for 78 days they pummeled a nation that did not offend NATO and gave no reason to trigger Article 5 in any way, shape, or form. You combine those two things, eastward expansion to Russia's borders with NATO weapons and NATO military bases and just NATO propaganda of marginalizing Russia and trying to tear apart the Russosphere. They even offered NATO membership to Georgia. When you combine that with NATO's new offensive posture in Yugoslavia and Libya, I mean, the United States has done enough. NATO has done enough, and in my opinion, and it's too late, and they have to now reflect on to the extent to which they helped provoke this. This is not as fringe of an opinion. You know, John, was it Mearsheimer has one of the most popular of University of Chicago, has one of the most popular videos out there. I've never seen a University of Chicago video hit 15 or 20 million views. So obviously he argued that 7, 8, 9 years ago that NATO eastward expansion was going to end up in a war. Was it Richard Kennan, the architect for post-World War II containment theory? He came at Harvard University, came out of retirement in 1998, said what Clinton was doing with NATO eastward expansion would end up provoking a war with Russia. Even Henry Kissinger, who I'm no fan of, even he recognized, prescient enough to recognize that. Peter Hitchens has been writing articles of late, very brave articles, talking about how NATO ended up becoming, it went from being a very, very practical and very just strategic alliance to increasingly, especially after 9/11, sort of becoming increasingly ideological and married to a globalist project, and pushing globalist woke values as well. And so, I think he is prolonging the war. I think he is prolonging damage, and I think we should be doing everything we can to encourage Zelensky to sit down with Russia. Russia's got demands that are non-negotiable, and I do think that it's a humiliation to NATO, no question, but they're going to have to comply. I mean, they have no choice. The longer they wait on this, the more territory Russia's going to take, the greater their demands are going to become. So that's the way I'm seeing it. Great question, Navid. Very, very, and thank you for the super chats here. Shadow Cat of the North, any thoughts on how the French election's going? Yeah, not so good. Yeah. Zemmour seems to just tanked. He's around 10%. I mean, it's good in the sense that the last polls I looked at is Marine Le Pen was polling around like 19%, and Zemmour was polling around 10%. So it's like a total 29%, and that's a tie with Macron, 29%. So it's Macron and Le Pen if you take Zemmour out. Okay, no one else is coming close. It's 2017 all over again. But it looks like at least at this point, just Le Pen didn't do it, and she's going to have to now think about turning over the leadership of National Rally to someone else. I mean, her niece is the most likely heir to that. So it looks like at this point we're going to get another 5 years of Macron. So we'll see how that goes. Coach, can the U.S. survive with the dollar losing its power? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And high debt when other nations like Russia, China, and India putting power into the currencies. Coach, you are rocking. You guys are. I'm going to just with Coach's super chat here. When I first started talking about this 4 weeks ago, I was just basically accused of being a Putin puppet. I don't know if you saw some of the comments I was getting or in some of the live streams. I mean, I was just, here's Turley just throwing his Putin propaganda out here. And it was just completely dismissing. I have noticed that over the course of the 4 weeks, maybe I just got in a different audience, but I've noticed over the course of the 4 weeks, people are starting to get it. They're starting to see that the same media that lied to us about the Russian collusion hoax, that lied to us about Hunter Biden's laptop being Russian disinformation, are now supposedly the paragons of virtue when it comes to relaying reliable information about Russia. Doesn't work, does it? They're just lying their asses off with this whole conflict right now. Now, again, this is not to say there aren't tragedies and human tolls. Of course, it's horrible when you have 140,000 troops on one side clashing with 120,000 troops on the other. Things are going to get broken, and it's going to be horrid, especially with the tools that we have to kill today. I hate war. I mean, I despise it. But what we have to understand is this is so much bigger than Ukraine, and it's so much bigger than Russia. And so Coach is giving us, and all of the questions that we've been getting is giving us questions that's seeing this so much, is seeing the bigger picture. So can the U.S. survive? Well, yes, the U.S. can survive. Sorry, I need my fuel there. U.S. can survive because the U.S., what is it? You need fuel. What do you need? Food, fuel, and finance. Those are your three bases for power and for a functioning, flourishing social order. right? People got to eat. People got to be able to, heat their homes and move around and so forth. And then you have to have the means to acquire and to purchase and so on. When it comes to food, fuel, and finance, there are very, very few nations that can even come close to the United States. The United States, just in terms of the sheer size of it, the output of its economy, the culture of hard work and success. We have even like a cult of success here in many respects. That we're going to get through this. Now, the dollar's going to change. We're already seeing it with inflation. We're already seeing a significant change with the dollar. But it's going to change. But I think it's actually other nations that are going to be, and particularly European nations. They're just kind of caught in the middle of things. That's what we're going to have to keep an eye on in terms of just the standard of living drops that are going to happen as a result of not just inflation, but stagflation, when you have both inflation and recession. Because Europe just doesn't have the resources in terms of the food, fuel, and finance. They just don't have the resources the way the United States has. So we'll get through it. Yeah, we'll get through it. We will not be the head of a globalist world order anymore. That's, we're going to need now a post-globalist geopolitics. And in fairness, I mean, scholars are working on that. They've been working on that for 10 years or so, at least. What they call postmodern international relations, or postmodern, or even post-secular, interestingly enough, international relations. That's a huge literature right now. And postmodern geopolitics. Not postmodern in the first wave of, there's no absolute truth and, life is meaningless and whatever. Not the Jacques Derrida or anything, Michel Foucault, the postmodernism that Jordan Peterson's always talking about. That's what's technically known as first wave postmodernism. Third wave postmodernism is how the world is breaking away and breaking apart from the modernist globalist structures that defined it. First, in terms of the Cold War, it's a bipolar world. Then in the post-Cold War unipolar world, where America was basically the chief architect of the world order, and that's just simply breaking up. And so now we're going into more of a multipolar world, with the rise of a return to nation states in many respects, with the Patriot movements going on all over the world, and now, as we're seeing, increasing the rise of civilization states in the form of the very three that you mentioned: Russia, China, and India. And already they're creating their own currency networks. So we're 40% of the country is going to, at least in part, wean itself off the dollar, which is, yes, it's going to have ramifications, but we can survive. We can do that. Great question, Coach. It's wonderful. Let's see. I think I saw another one just pop up here. You guys are great. Someone just asked, any hope for Europe long-term? Yes. There's hope. We just actually answered that question. Yes, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. The default is to go back to the bullies in Brussels and the basic civilizational structure of globalism, which is not really a civilization, but more a system. And, there we go. Another one, Wololos. And it's going to take, and to marginalize the Patriot movements, the Matteo Salvini's, the Marine Le Pen's, the Voxes and all that, the Jimmy Åkessons of the Sweden Democrats, sort of marginalize them as friends of Putin. And I think over time that will wane. That will only be able to go on for so long. You're seeing the same thing here. You're seeing, I probably do a video on that, how our elites are trying to now turn the war away from Russia and turn it on to patriots. Tucker Carlson in particular seems to be the patron saint or I guess in this case, the demon, the head demon, the archdemon of the Putin wing of the Republican Party, as Mark Levin talks about it, or Sean Hannity talks about it. So anyway, I think you're going to see a push. The Klaus Schwabs and so forth are going to push for a hardcore reset here in the West. They're not going to be able to do it around the world, but they can do it here in the West. And I think in the end, because of the world's new architecture with the rise of civilization states and post-globalism, it's just not going to work. And over time, we're going to want to go back home to the nation state and to our customs, cultures, and traditions. And Wolalos, you think the freedom society of more liberal countries are going to fall under an authoritarian regime of the new civilization states? Yes, but in terms of, say, like the EU becoming a civilization state. So there's a very interesting theory out there, an argument. We'll do a video on it, that globalism, the Soros, Schwab, Davos, dolts in D.C., bullies in Brussels, globalism, that was meant for the entire world and to bring the entire world under a single worldwide political and economic system that could be managed by a new political class who are all trying to become the first trillionaire. That is obviously breaking up. And then what you're going to see instead is, all right, let's refocus our efforts then just in Europe and the United States. That's going to be, and Canada and Australia and New Zealand. They're like, that's going to be the big focus. And if that's the case, the way it would possibly work out in Europe is that Europe could become your first sort of globalist civilization state, where globalism now becomes the civilization of the continent. And the EU becomes officially a super state, rife with its own army and you name it. And all the various nation states are going to be more like counties, like here in the United States, or states like what we have. You're going to literally have a federal government in Brussels. And in fact, that's one theory of how this could work out. I don't think, if it did go in that direction, I don't think it'll last. If you're worried that societies, nation states are going to come under imperialistic tendencies of the civilization states of China, Russia, and India, at this point, the only state that I see as a potential victim of that is Taiwan at this point, depending also how you work out Kashmir too. In terms of its politics. I mean, I would say that's the only one that I could see. Because, again, they're not so interested in taking over the world. They're interested in taking over a world. And within their own sphere, their own cultural sphere, they're going to work it out. We don't even know what's going to happen with Ukraine. Is Donetsk and Lugansk, are they going to just eventually get annexed into Russia? Are they going to be their own sovereign nations? What about the whole area around the Azov that Russian forces have taken over, and also up north around Ukraine? Are they gonna leave? Right? Those are interesting questions. We don't know that, but yes, theoretically it can happen, but I think it's in limited spheres. I don't see it in, for example, the satellite states of the old Eastern European bloc. I don't see that. Certainly not NATO states. I don't see Russia attacking Poland or anything like that. Again, that's exactly what people were saying on Fox News. He's going to go right into Poland and Hungary, and it's like no, that's not what's going on here. I think the last thing Russia wants to deal with is the headache of Poland. That's for sure. Very anti-Russian sentiments in Poland historically and contemporary. So, but yes, the map is going to change. And again, it's so interesting because we have globalism to thank for that in one sense, because globalism erased boundaries and borders. Globalism erased borders. Globalism, particularly for the United States and for European countries, globalism basically rendered borders irrelevant. Now, when you render borders irrelevant with this trans-bordered, transnational system, don't be surprised that when people don't like that system anymore and they want to go somewhere else, like a civilization state, don't be surprised that they say, well, and by the way, thank you for erasing those borders. We'll take it from here. So I think that's an important point to keep in mind. This is a very complex situation, but also a very logical one. And globalism, unfortunately, has played, I think, a very, very significant role in bringing us where we are today. So Fiona gave a yes, definitely hope in Europe in the long run. Underline in the long run. That's the key. Maryland, is there any hope in America? Yeah, of course, Maryland. Sure, absolutely. I do right now. I mean, Victor Davis Hanson wrote an amazing piece on the upcoming midterms. He thinks it's going to be the reset of the reset. he said the Great Reset is going to itself get sort of reset and reset around patriot sentiments. All the polls point to the Democrats getting absolutely blown out of the water. They can pull whatever shenanigans they want. All the polls are showing that they're gonna get crushed. So yeah, no, there is hope. The patriot movement is stronger than ever. But again, you have to remember the divide between the people and the elites are everywhere. They cut across everywhere. If you're a churchgoer, you probably noticed that. There's a big difference between the sentiments of the pastor and the sentiments of the people sitting in the pews. The pastor's going to be very politically correct, doesn't want to offend anyone, and so forth. Where the people in the pews are like, who the heck's this guy talking to? You know, it's just so... Again, what we have to understand, what makes Russia so unique, I just saw the latest poll, I think it was from Interfax. What makes Russia so unique is that they don't have that divide between the people and their political class. The political class and the people share an almost identical worldview, an almost identical sense of things. So that's why, according to the latest Interfax now, the support for the war is 80%. Among Russians. They're absolutely, I mean, so it looks like the lack of support is basically the cosmopolitan crowd in Moscow and St. Petersburg or whatever, but the vast majority of Russians are right there because they feel that Putin represents their traditionalist populist values faithfully, just the way we felt with President Trump. Now, again, it's a different political structure there, which, by the way, Russians are basically happy with. There's studies on that as well. We can get into that. Russians are basically happy with their political system. So we are incredibly arrogant to run around thinking that we need to tell Russia how to live its life, the bullies in Brussels and the dolts in D.C., you know, the woke West, as they're often referred to, or as the weird crowd. What was it? Western educated, indoctrinated, I forget the R and the D, but yeah, you know, it's just there's just definitely a sense that they feel like they've entered into a new world, a post-globalist world, and we're still clinging on to it, and it's not making a lot of sense to them in a nutshell. So yes, there's hope for America as our political class comes more in line with the concerns of patriotic Americans who are growing by the day, just demographically speaking. So Chauncey, Russia seems to be becoming a strong Christian nation. Shouldn't social conservatives in our country support that? What do you think? Many don't see it that way. Love your channel. Thanks, Chauncey. Yeah, well, that was already happening. There was very, very strong alliances between Franklin Graham and Patriarch Kirill, for example, in Russia, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. Steve Bannon has been working hard in creating conservative traditionalist Christian ties. I've been involved in it myself, you know, back in, was it 2019, 2018? I'm trying to remember when it was, when we were at the World Congress of Families, when I spoke there in Verona, Italy. We had a whole contingent from Russia that was there working together with everyone. Now, of course, what the left will say is, well, there you go. They're all the same bent. What we all have in common is we want to go back to our traditions, our traditional cultures, customs, and traditions. How you work out your traditions, or even part of your traditions, are going to be the political structures you return to. Russia, of course, has the tradition of the Tsar. We got the tradition of the Constitution. Constitutionalism, particularly Christian-rooted constitutionalism, the idea that the government is limited because we can be a virtuous and self-governing people. And we're a virtuous, self-governing people because of faith. And what faith does then is it enables us to be free. And on and on. I mean, you just keep developing the line. There's the triangle of freedom. I'm trying to remember. In order to have true faith, you have to have freedom. But in order to have true freedom, you'll like this. It's known as the golden triangle of freedom. And all our founding fathers believe this. In order to have true faith, you had to have freedom. All right, you couldn't have superimpose faith from top down or anything like that. So hence the disestablishment of the church. In order to have true faith, you had to have freedom. But in order to have true freedom, in order to be self-governing, is where you had to have virtue. You had to cultivate a sense of classical virtue, which involved cultivating a positive freedom, not just a negative freedom. We're not just free from coercion, but we're also free for doing what we ought to do. We're free to be good. We're free to live wise and virtuous lives. And the only way, they were convinced, the only way we can do that was by staying steeped in the tradition of faith. Faith awoke the virtue that awoke freedom. Right. So in order to have that freedom, you have to have virtue. But in order to have that virtue, you've got to have faith. But in order to have true faith, you got to have freedom, which requires virtue, which requires faith. You see, so it goes. That's the golden triangle of freedom. So, yeah, absolutely, we can be aligned with Christian conservatives in Russia, while at the same time recognizing politically we work that out in perhaps very, very different ways, because they tend to be more what we call autocratic libertarian. In Russia, and I have lots of friends, expats in Russia, and they all say, you can basically do whatever you want in Russia, but not when it comes to politics. Politics is sort of a given. And so they're different. They differ from a libertarian who believes that a political order is natural, can naturally arise, and you don't need coercion in order to bring it about. Whereas Russia does not believe that. Russia believes life fundamentally is chaos, and a very autocratic order has to come in to wrest that chaos and create some kind of stability. And then once that stability, political stability, is in place, then you can do whatever you want, basically, within reason. But that's autocratic libertarianism, and that's basically Russia. Whereas we tend to be much more libertarian. We tend to believe it's God and the human person, the individual. We have rights bestowed to us by God, and then we create governments in order to protect those rights for all people. So our order begins with humans and God. So anyway, there you go. The answer is yes, but it also recognizes diversity. The left will not they'll just say we're a bunch of Putin stooges. And there you have it. They said they want to align with Russia. There you go. It's just, but the left is, they're not going to be around. It's not a sustainable worldview. It's not a sustainable order. Let's see. And this is going to be the last one, because I do need to deliver on the title of the thumbnail and all. Can it be safely said this is Cheeto dictator? Can it be Cheeto? I love it. That's so cool. Can it be safely said that during his time in politics, Ron Paul was a sort of canary in the coal mine in regards to where the U.S. was heading? Yes, especially with foreign wars. Yes, especially with foreign wars. I don't know about necessarily his domestic libertarianism. That you could work that out. I do think today America's still, at least where we are right now, I think Charles Krauthammer was right. We're not a libertarian country. We do like, certainly not. We're in a post-FDR world. We do like interventionist government to maintain welfare and economic fairness and blah blah blah, for right or for wrong. I'm just saying. I don't think Ron Paul was a canary there, at least yet. If we start seeing inflation happening and the dollar losing so much of its value, we may not be able to maintain that welfare state. But when it comes to foreign wars, absolutely. He knew the Iraq War would cause blowback. By the way, you watch it everywhere. Just look at what people were saying in Serbia the other day, of how the anger that's still there, over 20 years later, with how NATO humiliated Serbia when Serbia didn't even attack them, and how the gall that the United States has in faulting Vladimir Putin for basically doing what we did to Iraq. No United Nations resolution, nothing. We went in, at the time in 2003, it was called unilateral. Technically, it wasn't, but it was unilateral in the sense that there was not the check and balance of the UN Security Council. Of course, Russia and China weren't going to give us the green light on that, but absolutely, I mean, you got it. Ron Paul said that is going to blow back against us. There's going to be a backlash like we never imagined, and here we are. Here it is. There's not a lot of people feeling a lot of sympathy for the United States, saying Russia's not allowed to do this, when everyone's turning around and says, but you do it. You do it all the time. You do it all the time. So anyway, no, you got it. Very good. All right, guys, let me, if you put in your super chats, I'll try to answer some questions at the end here. But let me show you. Oh, I did want to say the big change that's going on, or the big development. Let me get my words here. On the ground is the city of Mariupol. You may have heard of Mariupol, key city on the Sea of Azov. It does look like Russian and DPR forces, Donetsk People's Republic forces, did take the city more or less, at least enough to be able to stand in the city center, the administrative building. And again, the reports are they're hoisting the DPR flag above it. Mariupol is a very, very key strategic city, industrial city. It's a port city in the Sea of Azov. And with that, if that has fallen, that means now that Russian and DPR forces and Chechen forces have taken over the whole of the northern side of the western side of the Sea of Azov, and now Ukraine is cut off from that, and that's also that's an uninterrupted land bridge to Crimea. So Crimea now is basically surrounded by Russian territory at this point. Again, it remains to be seen what Russia plans to do with all this territory that's taking, which right now, as I understand, is bigger than the United Kingdom. The amount of territory that Russia's taken is bigger than the United Kingdom. So that's the major news that's coming out of Ukraine at this point. Very, very important. Industrial city Mariupol appears to be firmly in Russia's hands and DPR's hands. Now, of course, you're not going to hear that from the legacy media. And notice I'm using the term legacy media. What was it, last Friday? One of you guys said that. Say, Turley, stop talking mainstream media. They're not mainstream anymore. They're legacy. They're legacy media. And you're right. You're right. Absolutely right. So I made a concerted effort this week. Stop talking about mainstream media. We're mainstream now, right? They're the legacy media. Jurassic media. Jurassic journalism. Maybe that's what we're talking about. But you have to keep in mind the fake news surrounding Ukraine is unfortunately characteristic for so much of what passes also in conservative media. You guys talking about Sean Insanity, openly advocating for World War III, all in the name of Mariupol or Kharkov. None of these outlets, the legacy media, many conservative media like Fox or even the New York Post, they're not reporting on Ukraine. They're rooting. Okay, right? That's absolutely crucial to get here. They're not reporting. They're rooting. Right? I think you guys all get that. And so for me, what I've been trying to do is I'm trying to break through all that rooting and trying to get to the truth of what's really happening here. And eventually we get there. And I'm actually fascinated now. I think every article I'm going to show you is almost every article, is from the last couple of weeks. Last week. Yeah, all except one. The mainstream media, I did it. Lame stream media, I should say, is, or at least there are pockets in mainstream media that are beginning to admit that we are in fact seeing Russia win. And they're winning, if not on the Ukrainian battlefield, because they're not necessarily going there yet, though more and more are coming around to that. They are winning in the sense that it appears Russia really did ultimately want to take on the globalist world order. Ukraine, when all said and done, is simply a platform in order to take down the real prize, which is liberal globalism. So let's just look at some of these headlines. This is from Forbes. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. BlackRock owns so much money. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink says Russia-Ukraine war is upending world order and will end globalization. Well, that's about as explicit as you can get. This is from Newsweek. The war in Ukraine spells the end of globalization as we know it. This is from, this is going to blow your mind. This is from the New York Times. Just March 23rd, 2 days ago. Ukraine war and pandemic force nations to retreat from globalization. They're all saying the same thing. They're all saying the same thing. And what's so fascinating here is they're not saying it to us so much. They don't care about us. They'll lie to our faces all day long. We're just a bunch of sheep as far as they're concerned. They're saying this to the investor class, right? Forbes particularly. They're saying this to the investor class. They're saying this to the financial class. You can't lie to them. They depend on the media, and the media depends on them for their 401ks. They depend on the media to give them accurate information made for the integrity of their portfolios and their investments. So when we cut through all the nonsense on Fox News and CNN, which when it comes at least to the coverage of this war is identical, sad to say, and if we go directly to Forbes, if we go directly to CNBC, Wall Street Journal, and then astonishingly, even the New York Times, we're beginning to get a more accurate picture of what the real war is. We're getting a more accurate picture of what the real war is, what Putin is really ultimately trying to bring down here. And as it turns out, Ukraine is just a pawn. Ukraine is the tip of the iceberg. Ukraine itself, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, I don't, given the suffering, but Ukraine in many respects is irrelevant. What Putin is really at war with is liberal globalism itself. This is exactly what the renowned political theorist Francis Fukuyama argued last week. That was actually our live stream last week. Putin is not at war with Ukraine, right? If you think that through, if you think it through, I mean, I should say, if you believe, if you believe that Putin is ultimately all about trying to reassemble the Soviet Union, I think you've been duped. Again, you've been duped by the very same people that tried to dupe you with regard to the sorry, I can't do two things at once and do them both well. With regard to the Russian collusion hoax or Hunter Biden's laptop hoax, right? So hoax, Russian disinformation. The very same people that tried to convince you of those things are trying to convince you of their narrative for Ukraine that for some reason Sean Insanity is pushing, and even Mark Levin to a certain point. It's really tragic. But no, Putin is not at war with Ukraine. He's at war with liberal globalism itself. And if you've been following this channel, you'll know that what these legacy media outlets are telling you now, I've been telling you for a month, you know, they're coming out and they're recognizing we are seeing nothing less than the end of globalization itself, and some of them are even I mean, we have to even admit this. They are, so some of them are even admitting that Joe Biden is behind us. I'll just say it. I went to tiptoe around it and I couldn't. Some of them are actually recognizing bumbling Biden is actually behind the fall of the very globalism that he is supposedly the great cheerleader or the great leader of. All right. When we first started this was on February 24th. So literally almost a month ago. All right. My first video was entitled "The Liberal Globalist Order Has Officially Collapsed." That was the morning of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. It was my very first video. The liberal globalist order has officially collapsed. It has taken these guys a month to print articles like that. Print articles like Ukraine war causes nations to retreat from globalization. The war in Ukraine spells the end of globalization as we know it. BlackRock CEO, Russia-Ukraine war will end globalization. I mean, I got to tell you, guys, I don't want to pat the back. I don't want to boast too much. I don't want to, gloat, but my gosh, we've been ahead of the curve of this for a month. And these multi-million-dollar media corporations are only now realizing what we've been talking about for 30 days. It's almost, so make sure you smack that bell and subscribe button, gang. We are on the cutting, what did Rush Limbaugh used to say, on the cutting edge of societal evolution. We are on the cutting edge of a new post-globalist order rising. I mean, maybe that's just because it's what I do. I eat, sleep, and drink this stuff. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But hey, guys, just a quick note. I don't know if you like that shirt. What do you think? Good job, Joe. Licking ice cream with a nuke behind them. Ugh, it's getting actually a little too close to the truth. Guys, you could get your own and all kinds of t-shirts and swag just by clicking on the link below. One of the most common questions I get from you guys is how you can help us support this channel and the like. And really the best way is just buy stuff from our merch store. We got the awesome line of Let's Go Brandon shirts. We got our Freedom Truckers shirts. We got Rhino Hunting shirts. We got Good Job Joe, the world blowing up behind him while he's licking his ice cream. The guy just needs, frankly, a rocking chair, a blanket and a bowl of soup. But alas, you're going to absolutely love all that merch. Click on the link below. Check it out. Buy whatever catches your eye. You'll be spreading Patriot Hope and supporting this channel. Click on the link below. Go to store.turleytalks.com. That's store.turleytalks.com. There you go. I got that little plug in there. So what's the basic argument coming from this media outlet? Well, the basic argument is it goes way beyond the fact that so much of the world, particularly Europe, is dependent on Russian fuel, food, and fertilizer, right? Such that any sanctions against Russia just end up slapping them back because it upsets the market at its most core level in terms of the hierarchy of needs of food and fuel, right? We all need that. And, of course, Russia is an exporting superpower when it comes to the very staples of human existence, food, fuel, and fertilizer. But this goes far beyond that. That would be bad enough. What we're seeing really is nothing less than an alternative economic system being developed by the world's two largest nations, China and India, combined making up 40% of the world's population, rallying around a renewed Russosphere, a renewed Russian civilization state that now numbers upwards of 300 million people when you bring in all the different satellite nations like, Georgia and Armenia and Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan and the like. So, and of course, increasingly, Ukraine. So what that means is that 45% of the world's population right now are actively building an alternative economic system to that of globalization. And what's so key with globalization, is that it operates by definition according to a one-size-fits-all political economic system. We have to remember what makes globalism so unique is that it's not so much a civilization as it is a system. And that's a key to get. It's not so much, globalization is not so much a culture or a civilization. It's a system. It's a scientifically inspired mechanism of technology and telecommunications that in effect creates a single worldwide political and economic system. And at the heart of that system is SWIFT. All right, you guys know that, the financial exchange platform. It became pretty popular just a few weeks back. SWIFT is an acronym for a ridiculously cumbersome name, the Society of Worldwide Interbanking Financial Telecommunications. Only a bunch of geeks are going to come up with that term. That's what SWIFT stands for. But it's an internationally interconnected platform that basically governs all worldwide financial transactions. It records them and the like. The key to get here is that SWIFT, being the default international financial transactions platform, SWIFT is not simply a part of economic globalism. SWIFT in many ways is economic globalism, right? We've talked about that before. SWIFT is economic globalism. SWIFT is the platform by which all financial institutions all over the world are integrated. And it guarantees American and EU control over the entire global economy. Because America and Europe control SWIFT via our central banks, that means that the US and the EU can at any time cut off any nation they want from this platform, enabling international financial transactions. And that's exactly what they did to Russia. You all know they expelled Russia from the SWIFT financial exchange platform as the heart of their massive economic sanctions against Russia. And what we're finding is that act of trying to isolate Russia, however well-intentioned it may have been, by expelling its banks from the SWIFT platform, that act had a twofold blowback, like Ron Paul would say. It had a twofold blowback against the globalist system. First and foremost, this would be a passive blowback. It did not hurt the Russian economy the way the dolts in D.C. and the blues in Brussels had planned. Look at this from The Guardian. This is from yesterday, Thursday, March 24th. Russia's stock market rallies in first day of trading since Ukraine war. And it basically goes on to talk about how the ruble is more or less recovered. It's the same day that Putin announced that all unfriendly nations are the nations that are sanctioning Russia. They're now going to have to pay for Russian fuel and food exports in rubles, the Russian currency. And this is gigantic because Europe gets about, again, 40% of its natural gas from Russia. So this is why, contrary to what we're hearing from Biden administration, all that, Russian oil and gas continues to get purchased. It continues to get exported unabated, right? Because we're so dependent on it. Saudi Arabia isn't pumping out more oil, even though Biden expressly asked Saudi Arabia to do it. If I recall, didn't Boris Johnson, go out to Saudi Arabia to get them to do it? Or was it the United Arab Emirates? I can't remember which nation, Middle Eastern oil-producing nation he went to. They said no, they're not doing it. Biden groveled to Venezuela to get them to supplement Russian oil. Maduro told them to take a hike. So now we got Russia really, sticking it in there, telling them that from now on, Western powers, from now on, U.S., Canada, and EU, Australia, New Zealand, as well as Japan and Taiwan, they got mixed up in this as well. Whenever you are going to purchase our oil, you're going to ditch the U.S. dollar, and you're going to pay for it in rubles. You're going to pay in rubles or you're going to freeze. That's your choice, right? You're going to pay in rubles or you're going to starve. So that's kind of the passive backlash, that the sanctions did not have the effect that they were supposed to have. But there's an active backlash as well. To make matters even worse, after Western powers effectively weaponized SWIFT by expelling Russia, a number of non-Western nations, frankly, have gotten very, very nervous about that, right? Given that the U.S. and the EU have now effectively weaponized international economic interdependence, more and more nations are asking, when are the U.S. and the EU going to do the same thing to us? And so this weaponization of the international banking system is causing nations like China, India, Pakistan, a number of others to rethink their own relationship to SWIFT, and in turn entertain alternative economic systems, alternative monetary transaction platforms that will indeed create a very real worldwide alternative to the economic globalization overseen by the Western powers. China has its own international payment called KIPS, and it's an acronym for Cross-Border Interbank Payment System. Russian banks are already connected to KIPS, so they're having no problem switching over to that. And then when Visa and MasterCard announced that they'd be sanctioning Russia as well, Russia's domestic Mir card, their Ruski Mir, it's used all over the Russosphere, 300 million plus economy, populated economy. It suddenly became very popular. And then China's has their own Visa and MasterCard substitute, which they're now using interspersed with Russia. It's called the Union Pay System, the UPS, and it's significantly bigger than Visa and MasterCard. And now we're even seeing, as one of the comments said here, now we're even seeing moves that suggest nothing less than a full de-dollarization. Look at this. This from Zero Hedge. IMF warns countries may cut dollar reserves in response to U.S. sanctions against Russia. It's exactly what we were talking about in the first week that this was happening. Or I should say that right after the weekend, the first weekend, when the U.S. and EU announced the blitzkrieg of sanctions against Russia. This is exactly what liberal arrogance, both from the neo-libs and the neocons, this is what it gets you. This notion that we can push around any nation we want by weaponizing economic systems against them, which only in turn reminds the entire non-Western world, which is 80% of the world's population, that the U.S. and the EU may do the same thing to them. It reminds them that they use a single financial transaction system, but they don't control it. That's how non-Western nations are feeling. That prerogative alone belongs to the dolts in D.C. and the bullies in Brussels. And more nations just don't want to be a part of this anymore. So as you could see with all of these articles, they're all concluding the same thing, what we've been arguing now for a month. Okay? So smack that bell and subscribe button. We've been arguing for this for a month. They're just catching up. The liberal globalist order really is collapsing right before our very eyes. And it really doesn't look like there's anything that the globalist powers can do to stop it. In fact, all their actions suggest that they're only going to exacerbate it and make it worse. So that's what I got for you guys. Let me check out a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up here. Woo! We've been going almost an hour and a half. Pretty good, guys. Sandiford, thank you for your $5. Even if Russia loses in Ukraine, and to be honest, I pray they do, I believe it will be a benefit not only to the end of the elite, but to Russia. Very possibly, Sandiford, absolutely, because they've already put all the pieces together for a parallel society, in effect, a parallel economy, parallel currency, parallel financial transaction platforms, parallel sports, parallel IT programs, parallel social media, you name it. Yeah, so they're going to enter into a civilization state one way or the other. No question about it. I think you're absolutely right on that. Let's see. Did I get anybody else? Let's see. I missed. Forgive me, guys. This is where I need a moderator. I'll try to get one at some point. Did I get anybody else? Did I miss? You think rhinos can damage Trump's next presidency? Yeah, Willolos. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, rhinos suck. Rhinos are just woke Republicans when all's said and done, and everything woke turns to shit, right? So yeah, they can damage. We'll see to what extent he learned from his first presidency, his first term, because right now it looks like he's going to beat Biden easily. We'll see. The second term is going to be, it's going to be dope, man. It's going to be crazy. Media is going to have a collective stroke every single day. It's going to be amazing. And we'll just have to see to what extent he's able to push back against the swamp, both in the forms of neolibs and neocons, rhinos, as we call them. I thought I saw one more up there. Oh, Cuspian Cat, thank you. Very, very kind of you. I got a little thank you, Steve, there. Thank you, guys. You guys are the best. Let's see. Oh, we're just seeing some bullshit too. Some losers coming on the channel here in the chat. I say. Let's see. There we go. Adelia, do you happen to see the mock burning of the Tower of Babel Russians did recently? Was this symbology for the end of globalism? That's interesting. I did not see that, so I can't comment. It sounds like it would be, though, wouldn't it? Tower of Babel is... it's really interesting because there's the poem that has that line, that hideous strength, to describe that Tower of Babel. And C.S. Lewis used it in his the third of his space trilogy. And it escapes me who did the poem. Maybe you guys might know the poem that used that term, that hideous strength. His space trilogy, the final one, that hideous strength, is his own version of Brave New World, that the world had become run by an elite technologist culture class that's basically enslaves the vast majority of humanity. And so he referred to that as a new Tower of Babel. So yeah, you're onto it. There may definitely be some symbolism there, but I'm not familiar with the actual situation. All right, guys, I think that's it. I hope I got, do you believe God in the mix? God is in the mix. Valerie, do you believe, I don't know what SPMENOW, but do you believe God is in the mix? Valerie, God is always in the mix. God is always. The classical theological understanding of the sovereignty of God and the freedom of man is that no matter what we do, the infinite, eternal love of God always is there and uses that freedom to bring us closer to him, as an occasion to bring us closer to him and draw us back home to save the world. So God is absolutely infinite and absolutely authoritative and sovereign in the midst of all of our free acts. And the more, however heinous they may be, and God, we can make the demons shudder, however heinous they may be, that infinite, eternal, life-giving, redeeming love always attaches itself to that event as an occasion and an invitation to draw us closer to him. So he's always there. There's nothing random in the world. All right, guys, that's about it. Looks good. All right, we've been going an hour and a half. You guys are the best. Thank you, guys. Amen and amen. Well, it is the Feast of Annunciation. We got to bring in some theology here. No question about it. Yeah, it's great stuff, guys. You're wonderful. Thank you so much for all your support. Again, visit our merch store. Grab a cool little T-shirt there for yourself or for the patriots in your life. And you're amazing. Yeah, and pray for Ukraine. Pray for Russia. Pray for both nations. I mean, again, we may be upset at leadership and so forth, but there's brothers involved here. There's quite literally, it's almost like a civil war. No, not in a nation sense, but in a spiritual sense, being both Orthodox Christians. So it's make sure you definitely are praying for peace in this region and the end of globalism. I think either way, globalism ends. That's just a given, no matter what happens in the end. All right, gang, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Love you guys. You're amazing. Did I just see one more? Oops, sorry. I might have seen one more. I want to give you guys, you're so kind. Let's see. Was that it? No, I may be wrong. Just wishful thinking. But I have it on a delay. That's why. So I do see that they're oh, wait a minute. I did get some. See, it crossed you. There we go. I knew I got it. Antoine, thank you, Dr. Steve. Happy Friday to you. I like your Denver your Denver, what do you call it, little Graham there or so forth. That's my wife's favorite team, Broncos. Rory, I follow some awesome Russian metal bands. There's no way the neocons are going to keep me from getting my head bang on. There you go, Rory. That's right. Yeah. No, there's some good Russian bands, and there's some good there's even good Ukrainian bands as well. Which one was Dubuk? Is it Dubuk? Is that Ukrainian or Russian? I'm forgetting. I got a video on that you might want to check out. The Nationalist Vision of Heavy Metal. And I featured some Russian and even Ukrainian metal bands. So there is a song called Slavia Ukraini, Glory to Ukraine. So there you go. All right, guys. God bless. I love you. Thanks so much for all your support. Keep us all in your prayers, and keep praying for Russia and Ukraine and for the world. God bless, guys. See you.